It's the final episode of your favorite YouTube series, making a track from start to finish. We are going to finish the track today. So, what we need to do is we need to listen to it from start to finish, and we need to pay very close attention to anything that we still want to change. We're going to do some coloring and some processing on some of the groups, and then we're going to overall push the volume of the track up to a reasonable level. Now, keeping in mind the whole time that this is a beginner tutorial. So while we're going to touch very basically on all of the points that you need to keep in mind as you progress into the future, we're not going to be really utilizing everything to its fullest potential because I don't want to go too deep into EQ and compression to the point where it just gets a little bit overwhelming, right? So we're going to use everything tastefully. So without further ado, what we can do is we can listen to the track from start to finish and just make sure that everything's still all right. And then we'll systematically go through each group and just make some changes if we need to. So let's listen. Bongo can come up a bit. Still feeling like this drum effects has got a bit too much bottom end. We might pull that up a bit, just listen to how it goes. I reckon that cowbell could be louder. Awesome. That's the tune, guys. That's the tune, and I'm pretty happy with it. So, what do we want to do to finalize this? We could talk about like, we could talk about a little bit of processing that we could do definitely over the top of the percussion, right? So I can show you some cool stuff that you could do with some of the Ableton and built stuff. So they've got these, where is it? I should have done some preparation before I just drove into it. It's called Drum Bus. There it is right there. Cool. And we got all these different like settings that they've come up with. And we can try putting these on our drums and see whether it sounds cool. So what do we want? Do we want boom, or do we want crisp, or do we want a sharpener or a softener, or what do we want? Let's go for a sharpener. And let's have a listen. Brightens it up nicely. Now we might be getting, yeah, we're getting louder volume as well. Nice. Right, so that's going to add a little bit of brightness. What else can we do? Tube. Would tube be interesting? Could we put some tube on it? No, that's probably not a very good idea. Not for the percussion. What else could we put on the percussion at this point? I don't really think it needs too much, but there's some things that we can just consider, right? Like, we could compress everything overall very gently just to make sure that we're kind of keeping everything sort of together. I like the compressor settings are maybe a bit advanced for the scope of what we're doing, but it would be handy to start using compressors. So what we might do is we might just very gently, we'll keep the settings that we've got typically here. Maybe we'll go, 10 on the attack. And then we're just going to gently pull this down until we're getting a little bit of, you can see when the snare's hitting, we're getting a bit of gain reduction, right? All right, we'll pull that down. It's really only the snare that's triggering that. And we can use this to kind of control the snare, actually. Right, so it's just making that snare a bit more gentle. And it's bringing the volume just down just a tiny bit. It's just giving a very small amount of control, right? It's really not doing a huge amount. But whenever that snare hits, it's just getting pushed down very gently in volume, and it kind of sort of glues things together. I know it's called glue compressor. It's pretty typical to say something like that, but it works on consolidating and making everything feel a bit more cohesive with one another. Now, on all the leads, what could we do? We could do something like, we could try that dynamic tube on the leads and just see. I'm not noticing anything too interesting for that. What we could try is we could try saturating it all. I like medium curve. Right, so that really brings the volume up. It's adding a bit of brightness to the sound. Oh. I think I put that on the up. Whoops. Let's put it on even. It's fattening things up for sure. Just pull it down a little bit. Yeah. It's adding brightness to sounds. Nice. And then we could compress everything as well. So if we go for a similar sort of setting, we could go for an even gentler ratio too, so affecting or turning the volume down of things a more gentle amount. So I'm gonna so we're losing a bit of volume. Nice. So just very gentle settings on all of this. We don't really need to do anything on the effects of that. Alrighty. Okay, so we've done some very, very, very basic stuff. We could try doing something with this, such as like, now that's where that tube would come in handy, right? So yeah, there you go. Right, so it's adding a bit more grit and tone to things. Quite like it actually. I'm gonna bring it down. I'm gonna just put a little bit of that on there. That's nice. What else could we put on this? Don't want to go too crazy with this either. I think that's good. You could maybe saturate everything as well, but this could get a bit dangerous. We definitely don't want to be like turning this stuff up, because then the mix will fall apart, right? The mix is based around the volume of things, so that if we then go and put effects on that are going to change the volume, that's not appropriate. Adding a bit of fatness too. Cool. Alrighty, so we got all this. How about we go ahead and we get a limiter, right? And we need to find, this is probably the loudest part of the track, right? And we don't want to crush this track into a limiter, all right? That's gonna destroy everything. So we're not gonna do, all right, you can see here, gain reduction. So that snare, that clap is really sticking out a bit, right? So I'm gonna push this a bit harder. All right, so you can see that the kick is now triggering it a bit, right? So what this is doing is essentially boosting the entire track by 10 decibels, right? And it's going to stop anything going over 0 decibels. So it's going to stop anything from clipping, like going over the 0 decibels, which would involve it potentially clipping. So the limiter is going to stop it clipping by internally clipping it, right? And it does that a couple of different ways. This limiter actually only just does it in one particular way, but you can get different limiters that have different ways that it sort of clips the sound, and it sounds different. So this limiter, yeah, pretty basic. So what we're doing is we're essentially pushing everything up 10 decibels, and we're getting it to a fairly loud volume. Right now, we don't want to push it too much into this, because, like I said, it's going to distort it. If we wanted to get even louder, you could get away with maybe that much, right? I don't want to go too hardcore with how I'm pushing it, but I think maybe you'll get... So, I mean, what does it sound like if you just go nuts? Right? So, not so tasteful, but quite loud, right? I think around 13 decibels boost is suitable, when I put the ceiling to 0.01 of a decibel, right? So it's just below 0 decibels. I think that's good. So now what we need to do is we need to export our song, because we're finished. So we press F11, we go File, we go Export, and let's talk about how the export part of Ableton works, right? So you can see it's going to render the track from the master. So it's going to send all of this audio through the master, through the limiter, and it's going to give me the end result. I could render all the individual tracks, selected tracks, or just certain tracks, right? So I want to just do everything. And I want it to start from the 1-1, and I want it to render until the end of the 70-second bar. I want it to include, return, and master effects, right? Yes. I want it to render as a loop. No. Convert to mono. No. Normalize. No. Create an analysis file. I mean, that doesn't really bother me. I'm using 44100. That's standard, so that's fine. Encode PCM. Wave. Yes, I don't know what encode PCM means. Does that mean, okay, you can't actually even change it? So PCM is referring to actually, I guess, how it's exporting it. So we want 24-bit, typically speaking, no dither. Dither is something that a mastering engineer can do. And then all the rest of that can just be left. So we go export. And then I've got this folder here that I export my tracks into, and I'm going to call it temporal YouTube song, right? So temporal for the artist name, YouTube song, and then we could write a little bit about it. So it's 110 BPM. It's in D. That's all that we really need. Maybe we could say mastered, and then we could put the date, right? It's a very long-winded process, but I just want to give you a bit of an idea of some of the stuff that you could put in there. I don't know whether it'll let me do forward slashes. Nope. I have to do dashes. Save. All right. So now what you've done is you've gone from the very beginning, making a beat, synthesis of sounds, arranging sounds, structuring track, creating effects, making things psychedelic, trippy, and you've built an arrangement. You've then taken that arrangement once you're finished with it and you're complete with it, and you have balanced the volume across the entire track. You've EQ'd things to control them and make them sound as good quality as you can using your ear, understanding that you want your bass to be clean and powerful, so you don't want a lot of other sounds conflicting with that kick and bass. So we're EQing the other sounds to make sure that they don't have bass content. We're listening to the sounds to notice whether there's any harsh frequencies that we can take out. We're using areas. We're looking a little bit too. We're looking at EQs. We're looking at, compressor settings to get an idea of how much gain reduction is happening, but then we're compensating with volume, et cetera, et cetera. And as you continually go through all this process, you're going to reinforce all of these ideas more and more. So we've set up the mix. We've got the groove working by thinking about how we want the drum kit set up, where we want it in the stereo field, kick and bass always taking the center, percussion moving around it, leads dancing around too, effects in the background washed out with reverb to create depth, to create immersion in the track, sweeps and rises to keep building and moving energy, so bringing energy up, transitioning energy along. We're thinking about that when we're arranging our track, how the track is going to tell the story from start to finish, how we're going to introduce new ideas, take old ideas out, and constantly keep the listener hearing something fresh, and even if it's a reinterpretation of something that we've already used. So all of these things must be in your mind when you're trying to write a compelling piece of music. So hopefully I've led you guys through that process fairly well. I know it a lot of times I've done things without explaining it super well, and you've been very patient with that. And obviously I've gone ahead and slapped compressors and limiters on stuff and not really talked about exactly what it's doing. So even in this episode, I apologize for that as well. Like always, you can ask me questions below in the comments. So that's it for 2019, looking at writing a song from start to finish, right? So in 2020, I'll come back and I'll do this again. And I'll do it with an approach where I'm actually trying to create a track of a high quality. So, when I listen to the song, You know, it doesn't blow my mind in terms of the quality of what I've actually made in terms of the creative or musical content. I've just kind of made stuff, just to give you an example. It's only 2.5 minutes long, you know, it's pretty basic. So I will go into more depth in the future and make another series where we smash out a bunch of this stuff. So I'll be doing more specific videos where we'll cover certain things. You'll be able to watch that as well. But from the bottom of my heart, I thank you from watching from start to finish. I really think that if you do watch this all the way through, it should set you on your way to being confident and knowing. Now, what I need to tell you right now is maybe the most important thing that you need to know. Keep repeating this process of starting a track from start to finish in its full completion, sound design, composition, mix, master. Keep doing it. Keep learning as much as you can. Keep using too much effects. Keep using not enough effects. Understand when you're being too heavy-handed with that stuff and when you're not being aggressive enough. You have to keep doing this process over and over and over again, because that's when it sinks in and you just get better at every step and every phase. And you'll find a system that works well for you. I've tried to be as tidy as I can teaching you. It does come a little bit natural to me because I think everything does need to be organized in order to know exactly what's happening. But it's so encouraging for me to see other people following my method and learning from what I'm able to share. And what I learned is learned from hundreds, or maybe not hundreds, but dozens of other YouTubers and music producers. So don't thank me. Thank all of those generous people that have shared their knowledge with me. I'm just a vessel to translate all that knowledge out to you. So I hope you've really enjoyed watching this, guys, and I'll see you again very soon in other videos on other content. Thanks.